Well, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Today, I'm pleased to bring you the first annual report containing the progress that's been made on our community-inspired strategic plan. Of course, the direction for this school district started with the Board of Education designing the process that we would then follow in order to develop a long-range strategic plan for this organization. Now, of course, this was done long before we ever knew a pandemic would be on the horizon, but the focus of our board at the time was capturing community voice, our entire community's voice. There was a desire to know, how can we get better? Where are there gaps that need to be addressed? And what are the hopes, dreams, and aspirations for the students of Henry County Schools? And after 8,000 unique perspectives were captured through surveys and community conversations and school meetings and student meetings, our 2021-26 Community-Inspired Strategic Plan was born. All of that sort of feels like a lifetime ago. But our strategic plan was designed to represent our collective understanding of the gaps in our organization and the areas that required targeted improvement. And it sets out with clarity the steps we need to take to achieve these improvements. So I'm actually going to be turning through the pages of the annual report, all of which the board has available to them to leaf through while I discuss. And I'd actually invite anyone here in the audience to choose to click into the QR code that was made available to you upon entrance into the meeting. And if you're online, the annual report has been made available on our district website under our strategic plan. As I flip through this annual report, I recognize that this is my report to our Board of Education on the charge they have given for the focused work to be accomplished. Our community-inspired strategic plan was actually built on 3 elements. And the first element is not widely represented in the report, but I don't want to skip over that. It is our foundation and our key understandings as an organization. And that foundation was developed in advance of launching a strategic plan. Because launching a strategic plan on a fractured foundation means that the direction has too much risk for falling through those broken cracks. It's found in our policies, and it includes an aligned system for teaching and learning, a commitment to continuous improvement and accountability for student learning, and it is a balance in the independence of local schools with strong, reliable organizational systems that promote a strong infrastructure. But let's jump to the second element, and that is our student priority outcomes. And that part of the report begins on page 14. If you turn to page 14 with me, you will know that our community was unwavering in its conviction about Henry County Schools being a high-performing district and being known as a high-performing district. But there was also a desire to identify metrics that meant more to our community members and revealed itself as priorities as we measure our metrics of success. So the strategic plan compiles these metrics that our community reflected, and I'm going to walk through some of those right now. There are 26 metrics, and they are organized into three significant buckets. On page 14, you see priority student outcome number 1, and that's literacy proficiency for every student group at every grade. And that we're going to measure this in 3 ways: reading growth from grade to grade, reading and writing on or above grade level, and access to diverse content, literature, and world language programs. If you flip over to page 19, you can see a summary of the effort pointed at improving the second priority outcome, and that is readiness to learn at every level. We heard from our community a desire for kindergarten readiness, and for that to continue into readiness for advanced coursework in elementary, middle, and high. And finally, it includes metrics around our students demonstrating personal health and wellness. If you turn to page 23, this is where we begin to outline the third priority student outcome, which is focused on college, career, and life-ready skills. Through this, we will measure things like the percent of graduates meeting acceptance requirements into competitive post-secondary institutions, graduates meeting college readiness benchmarks as indicated by PSAT and SAT, participation and performance, graduates meeting readiness for careers through pathway completions, industry certifications, and internships. And finally, very clearly resounding with our community was a desire for students to demonstrate financial literacy skills, employability skills, and for our students served in special education program areas, specific success on transition skills. As you leaf through the pages of 14 through 29, you get a full sense of this collective focus for improvement. But stating priority outcomes and organizing some work around those priority outcomes is really only just the beginning. This is when our board had to get back to work and grapple with the reality that clear goals are necessary to guide our improvement efforts. As you can see on the screen, our Board of Education has convened on multiple times to tackle this very important task. By establishing a local collection of metrics to guide the accountability for our district, it moves us beyond outcomes-based accountability and to a culture of opportunity and access-based accountability, being willing to hold ourselves accountable for creating opportunities for students and pathways into those opportunities while nurturing highly effective outcomes. This is a far richer approach to organizational focus and higher expectations for us as an organization. And what has been accomplished this past year is still in its very preliminary stage, but it is the work of setting goals around our priority outcomes. Our board has set 9 of the 26 metrics goals, and subsequent from those goals, which you can see on the screen, you can see a baseline is represented from 3 years worth of data, and then the green focus area is the board's established organizational goal. And that these metrics now will guide our improvement efforts and the way we work together as individual school environments. Because following the board's establishment of goals, school leaders reviewed their own baseline data and their goals associated with the strides of improvement that would be necessary. And I think we have a quick picture of our administrators working around these school goals. So we know the first component of our strategic plan is built on our foundation. It's found in our policy. But the second component is about student priority outcomes, where we are designing local accountability that will result in opportunities to publicize that specific to each school and to the district in digital and data dashboards. But that is then followed by the third component, and that is our strategic actions. There are 5 strategic actions, and each one is a reflection of our community's voice and the insights that that voice charged us to develop. And I would love to highlight a few of those accomplishments as we head into this new school year. So if you turn to page 31, I'm starting with strategic action number 1. And there is so much to celebrate because it transforms the experience kids have every day. First and foremost, the initiative to create a community of powerful readers and writers. The board has facilitated the review of instructional materials, the acquisition and now distribution and training of instructional materials for both reading and writing. In the FY23, the East Blast 6 program, $3.7 million was designated to acquire and equitably distribute these reading and writing resources. Another exciting highlight from strategic action number 1 is advancing opportunities in gifted and advanced coursework. I am pleased to announce the piloting of talent development programs that is specifically designed to nurture the giftedness in our young learners and provide advanced math options in our elementary schools, our middle schools, and our high schools. Our middle schools now have 4 high school course options for kids, including Visual Arts, Algebra 1, Spanish 1, and Physical Science for high school credit. And this is also about expanding our portfolio of opportunities in high school. And our dual enrollment options have expanded to include universities such as Harvard, Stanford, and Arizona State University, now being piloted at McDonough High School and Stockbridge High School, expanding to a few other schools this year, and a future commitment to developing that over time. As I get into the third initiative of Strategic Action 1, this is all about STEM, robotics, and coding. Our community was so clear that they wanted more STEM opportunities for kids, and our board has prioritized action on this. The first ever STEM high school's location has been identified. It is the current campus of Patrick Henry and will sit right next to Stockbridge Elementary School. And preparation for that STEM intensive curriculum is now starting in every one of our elementary schools. In the FY23 budget, the Board of Education allocated $2.5 million for a STEM specials teacher for every elementary school and $600 supply investment into that program. And additionally, the board approved over $619,000 for robotics equipment in K2 and 3-5 students' hands. And then finally, the Board of Education dedicated the district's first ever capital accumulation savings account for the purpose of reconfiguration of classrooms to be STEM classrooms, for the furniture necessary to complete those STEM experiences, and a budget that is currently in development to make sure those conversions are complete within the next 12 to 18 months. Initiative number 4 is all about the arts, and we are committed to expanding those arts. We had our first ever kaleidoscope of the arts with our visual arts teachers proudly displaying their students' work. And additionally, there is now a chorus program at every elementary, middle, and high school, and a band and orchestra program at each middle and high. The board allocated $1.9 million to the additional fine arts teacher in the FY23 budget for middle school and high school. And the FY23 budget also included a supplement of $600 for fine arts supplies and materials in middle and high school. And the Board of Education expended $380,000 from East Block 6 in order to accomplish our first ever growth and replacement effort in our band and orchestra instruments for middle school and high school. We believe in kids having access to the arts. So now turn with me to page 38, which is where you have the strategic action number 2 outlined. It's focused on effectiveness, one of our big rocks for this coming year. Initiative number 1 will be reported on more fully in a separate board report today regarding our highly effective classroom. But the Board of Education was also clear in initiative number 4 that we needed to focus our schools in their vertical cluster communities in a way that resulted in seamless experiences for families as they navigated K through 12. In FY23, the Board of Education allocated $52,000 to supplement a cluster principal lead for each cluster. And for the first time in a long time in Henry County Schools, our assistant superintendents of leadership are now organized to supervise clusters of principals instead of organizing solely by level. Go ahead and turn to page 41, where you can see progress on strategic action number 3. Initiative number 1 is about growing our partners of education infrastructure and improving the process for connecting partners in ed to schools. This past year has been about assessing our practices as we pave the way for improvements in a design year this coming year. But if you jump with me to initiative number 3, this is where our strategic action plan calls for a welcome center to be established. It was a dream for our community and for our Board of Education, and it has now been operating for 2 years running, and as I reported earlier, serving more than 2,000 families this back-to-school season alone. This is where we have the unity of so many community services now at the fingertip access of our families. This is where you can come for registration and enrollment and language and translation support, but also for food pantry, health services, immunizations, a clothing closet, rent and utility assistance, a kindness locker program, and so much more. Initiative number 5 is about designing a foundation, a nonprofit foundation for the purpose of additional student and staff scholarships. And in the FY23 budget, the board allocated $88,000 for the purpose of staffing this foundation. And number 6 is really about advancing language services. And you should now see every Henry County Schools message in a second language, and the investment in language line for our schools is improving the agile access to translation services. The Board of Education has dedicated $204,000 for additional translator staff and language services in the FY23 budget. Now let's jump to strategic action number 4, which is on page 45. And this is where we commit to advancing the health and wellness of employees and students. Number 1 is our counseling services and establishing a counseling framework aligned with the National ASCA framework. This is near completion and beginning to roll out into our school counseling environments. And the board invested in Henry's Futures, which is a platform to connect kids to post-secondary options, scholarships available, and academic preparation. The Board of Education invested $170,000 from ESSER for the purpose of advancing our counseling services and Henry Futures platform. Initiative 2 and 3 is about establishing a wellness framework and wellness commitment for students and employees. And this has been led through the allocation of a mental health and wellness facilitator at every one of our schools and Henry Cares check-ins for students and staff to aid in our assessment of how we tailor and design support to promote a positive school climate for kids and for employees. The Board of Education has invested $15 million to allocate a mental health and wellness facilitator for the past 2 years combined, and Henry Cares check-ins using the ESSER funds. Now let's finish out with Strategic Action 5, which starts on page 49. And this is all about the operational effectiveness of the organization. Initiative 1 is the acquisition of an ERP system, an enterprise resource management platform to integrate human resource processes, finance processes, and document storage protocols to replace our 40-year-old current system. It will integrate the digital solutions into one and allow us for automation and digitization of many currently manual processes. The team leading this work has had a robust workflow cadence on this very ambitious pursuit to get this to be a priority outcome of this coming year. And we are to the point of solicitation that is out on the market today and closes on September 1st. The Board of Education should have the opportunity to review a recommendation in November or December. Additionally, the Board of Education has established its capital accumulation savings account for this future expenditure, matching each of these items with a strategic funding strategy as well. At the bottom of page 49, you can see referenced a basic equipment list and growth replacement plan for every asset in Henry County Schools. This is a significant body work that was designed to take 5 years that we have significantly accelerated at the request of our board's coordination and cohesion around this important work. This work addresses the gap that you see or feel in the quality, condition, or the availability of furniture in classrooms and common spaces, the equipment for learning in classrooms and common spaces, as well as what's in our STEM labs, our science classrooms, our fine arts classrooms, and throughout our athletic fields and our athletic team equipment. We are lifting this massive change from a local school having exclusive responsibility for managing the replacement of old or worn furniture and equipment to a centralized asset management strategy complete with a basic equipment list for every space, facility standards, and a life cycle strategy complete with this basic equipment list for every purchase that is made. This massive body of work starts with establishing an elementary school facility manual that is near completion, with a middle school and high school manual about to follow. We will pilot 3 elementary school furniture and equipment exchanges this coming school year and prepare to do 1 middle school and 1 high school in the year that follows. We have completed the first installment of the band and orchestra instruments in middle and high school using eSPLOS dollars. And we will have completed the elementary school STEM lab spaces in the next 18 months. But finally, we will finish by addressing middle school athletic facility standards and pilot facility improvements in middle schools and a phase for high schools in the coming year. We will also complete a basic equipment list for at least 1 or more sports and pilot the growth and replacement for a team sport over the coming year. This work actually represents a significant maturing of our organization and our organizational systems. And it's a very deliberate approach to asset inventory, asset management, and asset accountability. And that will all have to accompany this work as it becomes realized in our organization. In order to actually do this, a funding strategy is required. And the board has already established that first capital accumulation fund savings account. And today we'll consider a recommendation to establish a third capital accumulation fund specific for the athletic improvements. The capital accumulation savings strategy is really the bridge from the time period of ESPLOS 6 into ESPLOS 7 as this becomes a part of our culture to have asset management and asset life cycles managed by a centralized approach. So as I wrap up this strategic action, I must address initiative number 4. This is also on page 50 and calls for a comprehensive compensation and classification study, which this Board of Education delivered on in just 1 year of the strategic plan. With a $21 million investment in the most historic salary improvements in the FY23 budget, resulting in at least an 8% increase in teacher salaries, 12% increase in para salaries, and every job family receiving targeted improvements, all employees have received compensation notifications regarding their improved salary, and a compensation profile will be distributed in the coming months. Coming out of 2 years of disruption, distraction, grief, loss, and heaviness, Henry County Schools actually emerges with clarity, focus, and ambition in how we are getting better for kids and how we accomplish our community's priorities. There are not too many districts who are emerging from the pandemic with quite as much in forward motion. And that is a testament to our Board of Education, who never lost sight that we held the hopes, the dreams, and the aspirations of our community delicately in our hands and never far from our hearts. A strategic plan shifts our culture from well-intended random acts of improvement to an organization with systemic and aligned improvement efforts from the boardroom to the classroom. We have only just begun as I provide the first of our annual reports for this 5-year strategic plan. But we are about to continue this ambitious pursuit of advancing those opportunities for kids, access into those opportunities for kids, and outcomes for every student in Henry County Schools. Madam Chair, that concludes my report of the first annual report of the strategic plan, and I turn it back over to you.